All right, guys, here we go again. The Office of Gun Violence Prevention, yet another unconstitutional gun control initiative by Joe Biden being rammed through by executive fiat because he doesn't have the votes in Congress and he just wants to do something on guns. But just how long will Republicans in Congress sit around and let Biden make up laws that clearly infringe on the Second Amendment? Don't know. Hi, guys. Ryan Flugaur with the National Association for Gun Rights coming to you with breaking news about the latest gun control announcement from the White House. Before I get started, please hit that subscribe button, slam that subscribe button below so we can keep you up to date on all the developments with this and everything else that's going on the Second Amendment right now. Also, please click the links in the pinned comment or the description below so you can get involved in this fight. So right now, not a week has gone by without Joe Biden blubbering through a gun control speech or some whacked out Democrat governor trying to just outright ban guns. At this point, the way the anti-gunners are flanking us has got to be deliberate. They don't want to talk about Joe Biden's illegal gun registration executive order that's also pending right now. And they also don't want to talk about the budget in Congress, which is funding this office or will fund this office and is funding things like red flag gun confiscation. Those votes are happening right now. So before I get into the dirty details about this new gun control czar task force that Joe Biden's announcing today, please take a moment, call your congressman at 202-224-3121 and ask them to in no way fund any budget that continues funding for red flag gun confiscation or for this latest gun control announcement from Joe Biden or any of his other executive orders that he's ramming through on guns. Remember that while the fake news is surrounding and flocking to Joe Biden in the Rose Garden speech today, the real question we have to ask ourselves is what are they trying to distract us from? Well, 15 years ago, you and I defeated Joe Biden's anti-gun agenda when he was leading it up for President Obama and their failed legislative efforts to register every gun in America. So today's Rose Garden speech is to showcase everything that Joe Biden has done to appease the radical anti-gunners and the radical left since then.
I'm proud to announce the creation of the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, the first office in our history. Created by executive order, I determined to send a clear message about how important this issue is to me and to the country. Well, my administration has been working relentlessly to do something. To date, my administration has announced dozens of executive actions to reduce gun violence, more than any of my predecessors at this point in their presidencies, and they include everything from cracking down on ghost guns, breaking up gun trafficking, and so much more. And last year, with your help, I signed into law the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the most significant gun safety law in almost 30 years. It strengthens background checks, expands the use of red flag laws. And by the way, I was the guy, along with a woman in California, we once banned assault weapons and multiple magazines. We're going to do it again. We're going to do it again. Call to action, a reason to hope, because for so long the conventional wisdom was we'd never get any Republicans to support gun safety legislation. But we did. For the first time in 3 decades, we came together to overcome the relentless opposition from the gun lobby, gun manufacturers, and so many politicians opposing common sense gun legislation. And we beat them.
And the creation of this new Office of Gun Violence Prevention within the Department of Justice is a critical piece to their agenda. Don't get me wrong, in and of itself, the office isn't a gun policy, but it will be the launching pad for every new gun control initiative for the next generation. And that's why it's critical that you and I, get Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell to grow a pair and stop this office right now. This office is based off of a bill that was proposed by Congressman Maxwell Frost, a rabidly anti-gun congressman from Florida. It was H.R. 1699. The so-called Gun Violence Prevention Office will consist of an appointed director, aka Joe Biden's gun control czar. It will also consist of an advisory council of gun control advocates, including representatives from various federal agencies and other folks. In other words, the Moms Demand Action Hague Brigade funded by Michael Bloomberg. Those are the people who are going to be running this thing. The office will evaluate gun control policies and recommend legislative and executive policy options and educate or indoctrinate the general public against the Second Amendment. The director will coordinate with federal agencies and commissions that have jurisdiction over gun issues. And we're not just talking about the ATF. We're also potentially talking about the CDC, which recently got even more anti-gun when the Stalinistic director Rochelle Walensky retired and a new, even worse and more anti-gun director, Mandy Cohen, was appointed. If all of this kind of sounds like the Patriot Act, that's because it pretty much is. Except instead of cobbling together government agencies to stop terrorists, this time they're cobbling together government agencies to persecute and prosecute law-abiding gun owners like you and me. This office will recommend and advocate for gun control policies that fly in the face of the Second Amendment and the Supreme Court's Heller and Bruen decisions. These policies will make it more difficult for law-abiding and innocent Americans to acquire the tools necessary for self-defense. And that's why it's just so atrocious. It's a taxpayer-funded gun control task force designed to funnel false data about guns and push bad policy. They're calling for this office to be staffed by the director of the ATF and the Office of Violence Against Women, which we all know is a really bad name for an office. But nevertheless, those two offices are going to be in it, and no fewer than 12 additional appointees at that gun control czar's discretion. Their job will be to sift through biased gun violence studies to make the case for gun control. And what's truly sad about that is the same McCarthy House Republicans who are about to vote for gun control this week to fund it are actually to blame for all of this. You may remember a couple of years ago during the September budget negotiations, House Republicans caved to then Speaker Nancy Pelosi and voted to repeal a long-standing federal law that prohibited government researchers from advocating against the Second Amendment with your tax dollars. It was called the Dickey Amendment, but now it's gone. And that's what set the stage for Biden's announcements today. But it's not the only bone the House Republicans threw to Biden. We know from our fight against the Republican-sponsored Threat Assessment, Prevention, and Safety Act, aka the TAPS Act, in Congress 2 years ago, which hasn't passed yet, but we know that this office will now have political cover because Republicans sponsored that to use pre-crime prediction strategies to red flag law-abiding gun owners who haven't even committed a crime and maybe haven't even thought about committing a crime. All because some computer program or Chinese-esque social credit system said so. We've seen from similar state-level gun control offices that have been already established in places like California and Colorado that these offices exist to skew gun statistics and run taxpayer-funded ads supporting gun control and to dole out money for the enforcement of gun confiscation programs. It's hard to imagine how this won't be how the federal office will be used too. I mean, reading from one such report from the office in Colorado, it says their office literally exists to, quote, conduct community-based gun violence intervention initiatives and to educate citizens on the use of red flag gun confiscation programs. Folks, this is propaganda. In what world would it be permissible for the President of the United States to establish an office dedicated to infringing on the First Amendment right to free speech, or the First Amendment right to peacefully assemble or worship in one's faith? If the president merely substituted First Amendment or any other constitutional right in his speech today for his attacks on the Second Amendment, Republicans and even some Democrats would be calling for his impeachment with the same zeal that they are doing so against the governor of New Mexico right now. But instead, a majority of House Republicans are about to vote to fund all of this with an ongoing budget battle that can happen this weekend. I know we all want to be pissed off at Joe Biden right now, but he's not doing anything we don't expect from a rabid anti-gun Democrat. We need to be upset at Kevin McCarthy and the majority of the House Republicans who are on the verge of funding all of this and rubber stamping it. They could be taking a cowardly vote on a continuing resolution to provide billions in gun control funding this weekend. I know it's Friday, but please call your congressman at 202-224-3121 and ask them in no uncertain terms not to fund the budget that funds gun confiscation or Joe Biden's new gun control office or his new gun control czar. Tell them to abolish this stuff and to end all of his other illegal executive orders, such as the ones on pistol braces or forced reset triggers or 80% lowers or his backdoor gun registration scheme. These things are unconstitutional under the Second Amendment and under Bruin, and Joe Biden's doing it, and Republicans are about to rubber stamp it for another year in the budget. But if enough House Republicans can be convinced to draw a line in the sand here and no further, Joe Biden's gun control announcement can be overturned right now. So that number again is 202-224-3121. Ask to speak to your congressman. That's the congressional switchboard number. Or you can look up your individual congressman in the link we provided in the description and pinned comment below. This is what you can do to fight back against Joe Biden's gun control agenda and his announcement today. Thank you very much. Oh, and by the way, before we leave, slam that subscribe button so we can keep you up to date on this task force and every other one of Joe Biden's anti-gun actions he's taking right now. We will let you know what happens this weekend with the votes in Congress. Thank you very much. God bless.